there's essentially kind of these concrete rules about most visual things uh, that's really good to know and have a foundation in. And you can tell pretty quickly, especially after you've been in it so long, that people are following those rules, but then also intentionally like breaking them. That's what's like makes design stand out, but also uh, making sure it's intentional. It's not like a mistake or just doing it for the sake of breaking the rules, but there's kind of a reason to it. And when it's apparent, and it just feels original and it feels cool. It's crazy how much design is out there, and to still have things that are kind of like, oh, that feels new, that feels fresh.
Very hard to get to. I feel like the trajectory of every designer's career is like it's bad, but you have good taste, hopefully. If you have good taste, you'll get there. If you have good taste and you stick with it, you'll get there. And then you start kind of imitating what everybody else is doing. And then that's when things start to look really good. And then you finally, and then some people get to this where they get over that hump, and it's like, now I start to have either my own style, or I can play in all kinds of different styles based on the client, what they're trying to communicate. And now I've learned the rules over the past several years. I can start breaking them and bending them and have fun with it. I think that's like that's the fun part you hope everybody gets to.
Yeah, totally.
When you were talking about design, I was thinking about Milton Glaser. I think someone asked him like, hey, what do I do? What do I do for a living? I move stuff around until it looks good. And I remember thinking like, man, he just totally undersold what he does as a living. He's joking, obviously, right? But I do think some people like think, oh, you just like move stuff around on the screen until it looks good.
Right.
It's not quite that, right?
Yeah, I do that too sometimes. Sometimes if somebody asks me what I do, sometimes I answer with, "Oh, I doodle for a living." that's part of it, but it's definitely not the whole story.
Right. You do it professionally, right? What's the most energizing part of working with the team at Native?
I think it's how passionate everybody is about their field. There's definitely parts of Native that if I were in that position, I wouldn't feel necessarily passionate doing the work. But I know the results are important, and I'm glad that we have people that are passionate about that. Because I think every aspect helps every other aspect of the end goal. So yeah, just having people that are passionate within their own fields and know that we're all working towards a common goal or end product.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I don't think either of us get too turned on about like timelines and things like that, but I'm glad there are people here who do, right?
Yeah, totally.
I get asked this question a lot when we're talking to people who are applying to work here, and they'll ask myself or anybody else in the room, like, why did you choose Native? Why did, how would you answer that question, and why do you continue to choose Native?
Yeah. I really love the initial idea. Like the first time we talked, you kind of pitched it as getting the most talented people in Kansas City to be part of the shop and like really have fun doing great work, essentially. And Native's changed a lot since I've been there, but I feel like we've always had that kind of common goal in mind, even if the clients we seek out have like shifted or become narrower. The type of work we do is a little different than it used to be. I think that main goal is one that we've kind of strived for.
Yeah, I think that's what it's all about. I mean, it's so much fun just to come in every day when we are coming into a place, but just being surrounded by people who really care about what they do, it's contagious. And I just everybody's been in a job where they were around people who didn't really care too much, and it's just makes you wonder like, what the heck am I doing here? So
Yeah.
yeah, you're right about that. Like every business changes a little bit, right? And we've certainly gone through some change, but just in terms of like focus and things like that. But you're right. Like I think the caliber of people is not changed or increased, if anything, I would think.
Yeah.
Um, so Christian, you've been here from, pretty early on. I mean, you're one of the people who've seen some of that change. We hit 5 years during quarantine, and instead of throwing a party, we all just stayed at home, right? Um, but if someone was to say, "Hey, you guys have grown steadily," what's the reason for that? What do you think it is?
I think it's part of what we just talked about. I think we have changed a lot, and I think the reason we have is because we are pretty flexible. Like we're willing to pivot when, sorry, when we feel like we need to pivot, but then also keeping some of those major points that are important to us, keeping that in the forefront and making sure that part doesn't change, but the rest of it's kind of open for improvement. And I think that also that flexibility is kind of a bit more democratic than it is in other companies. Obviously, I think creative specifically is put in input, and we don't necessarily do everything we say, because if everything was run by creative, it would be a mess. But we kind of assess those needs with the needs of project management and strategy. Does it make sense business wise? And kind of have this democratic way of changing things, because we're always trying to improve. And I mean, even looking at the project management process from my first day at Native compared to now is just like night and day, and in such a like 200% better way, that is just crazy to think back on those times.
Yeah, it's so true, and I think you're bringing up a good point. Something we've always tried to do is like, if we get all these smart people around, then let's make sure everybody has a hand in what we're building. It's a whole lot better than just following one or two people's opinions on that, because that's obviously gonna be flawed. At the same time, you can't just have like crowd rule, or
Right.
because you just move too slow. But I think we've done a pretty good job of like balancing input from all directions, considering that, have a good balanced approach. I think a lot of it comes from, I don't know, do you agree with this? Do you feel like we also just like respect each other's disciplines and have learned enough about it that we don't get territorial over things?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that flexibility, like even recently when we kind of had to switch because of COVID-19, has really shown how flexible and like easy changes, because we're kind of always doing that to improve ourselves. And I think it went a lot more smoothly for us than it might have at other agencies, because we know we're trying to achieve something together, and if we ever make a change, it's for the good of the whole company.